Great, everyone. So let's get started today. This month's webinar is all about B2B lead generation in 2023. Why lead generation? Because, of course, all of us working in BD or all of us who have companies and so on, obviously our main priority at some point is always to get new leads and to grow our business. But of course, we know that there are so many options, right? So of course, we can get stuck with one or two tactics that really work, but there is really a world of things that we should know in terms of lead generation, many different ways of doing it, and some differences whether it comes to B2B or B2C. So for today, we really wanted to help those of you who are in the B2B space. That's also our case for one part of our offer. So it was actually really good also to brush up our own knowledge and learn new things. The agenda for today is a few words on identifying your customers. I always like to start from the basics just to make sure that we're all aligned. Then we're going to talk about B2B lead generation trends. We selected the top 5 trends for this year, and then some tips or advice to build your own strategy. We're going to close with the Q&A session at the end, so you can ask all the questions you have in mind, and you can go as specific as possible. We will try to reply to all of them. So let's get started. Why we're here, there are a few goals to this webinar. So of course, the first one is to learn new trends. So making sure that we are on top of things when it comes to business development knowledge, ideally to improve our business development strategy, test new channels, test new tactics that maybe can help us grow. Of course, to get some inspiration, not only from me, but also from the other people in the webinar as well. I invite you to share your LinkedIn profiles if you want to network with each other and get to know each other. You can do it in the chat. And then, of course, the main goal of the webinar is to help you generate more leads. So hopefully you're going to take away one or more things that can help you generate more leads in your companies. It's super important. So everything we're going to talk about later on in terms of trends and so on starts from a very big point, which is you need to know your customers extremely well, right? Because all the tactics that you're going to see later, they're only effective to the measure to the extent that you really know your customers. Here, I'm not only talking about like what type of company or what type of job title does this person have, but really getting into really the preferences, the attitudes, the needs, the motivations, the buying behavior of your customers, right? So a little bit more in depth than the general customer research that we're used to do. Now, why we want to do this customer research and to do it in depth at the beginning, ideally, of our companies, or as we start working with our new company, or even if we work for a long time for the same company, it's always good to just refresh our knowledge of our customers. Why? Because the customer research really helps us stay on top of the customer needs. Customer needs can change over time. Customers' behaviors can change over time. So it's really important that we keep up with our customer research. Ideally, we use a process which we can reiterate constantly so that we can always improve knowledge about our customers. Obviously, a good customer research also helps us identify and fill gaps in customers' business, meaning we can create new products, new services, new value propositions that can help us grow our customer base or supply, to our current customers in a better way. It helps us improve communication, because if we know what people need, where they hang out, or what's their style, who do they like, and so on, it can become a lot easier for us to communicate with them. And then, of course, a good customer research helps us increase conversion rate. Why? Because we have more in-depth knowledge about what needs to be done in order to convince our customers. So how can you do that? Very simply, just go to analyze your past customers, see what type of people, what type of companies we're dealing with. You can do surveys. I know that as business developers, often you don't have the possibility to do surveys and to survey a lot of people. I was there as well, so it can be a bit frustrating, but surveys doesn't need to be like a super big project that involves all the company. You can simply go on LinkedIn, select 20 people that you think fit your customer profile, ask them questions, and that counts as a survey, right? So everything that you cannot do in big scale because of your companies, because you're not allowed to do, you don't have budget, Keep in mind, you can always do it on a micro level on your LinkedIn profiles, for example, or other social medias that are relevant to your business. What you can do is also to check the job descriptions for the positions, the job titles that you're targeting. For example, if your main buyer persona is the startup founder, let's say, you can just type like, what does a startup founder do, right, on Google, and then see what are their responsibilities, which helps you start the customer research. So we selected the top 5 that can really help you make a difference in terms of reaching your targets. We're going to talk about account-based marketing with some statistics and some tips on doing it, so how important it is today. We're going to talk about hyper-personalization, value-based content, and AI. So account-based marketing. What is account-based marketing? I would like to start from the very first definition. So account-based marketing is basically a qualitative approach to lead generation, so really to attracting our ideal customers, which is based on identifying and segmenting multiple target audiences and then tailoring and really personalizing the approach to them, right? We're going to see like what is the main difference, let's say, with the general marketing funnel. So here on the left side of the screen, we find the traditional marketing funnel, right? So usually when we want to attract people to our business, when we want to generate leads, first thing we do, of course, is, well, we need to generate awareness, right? So we need to make sure that people know we exist and that we can do something with them. And we can do that in many different ways, right? So we can write content, we can do events, we can do videos, we can go to conferences, we can do cold outreach, we can send emails, we can send messages on LinkedIn and so on, right? But we will start from, okay, we need to generate awareness with as many people as possible. After that, we want to nurture the leads that are most interesting. Then we find the ones that, according to our data, our marketing tools and so on, they're the ones that are more, let's say, prone or like ready to buy, and then we convert them. Now, if you think in terms of account-based marketing, the funnel is almost reverse actually, right? Because what we want to do, what we start with is actually with identifying the high value prospects, right? So how does that look like? We make a list of accounts, companies that we really want to work with because we think they would benefit from us and because we would love to work with them and want to use their logos and so on, right? So we start from these ones, which means we're not just sending random messages to everyone which fits that specific job title, but we have a very specific group of people that work in specific companies that we identified, and we only focus on those ones, right? But we focus on them in almost obsessive way, in the sense that everything we're going to do with them is going to be extremely personalized. We really want to provide as much value as possible in the nurturing phase, right? This helps us convert them. And then, because we were really focused on just this small pool of people, we're actually better able to build long-term relationships, which means opening up the opportunity of cross-selling, upselling, or of course, getting referrals from these people. Just take a pool of customers that you think would benefit the most, focus all your attention on these ones, operating on different levels. Now, how do we do that? So first thing, of course, is to list your top accounts. That is actually an exercise we're doing as well at the BD School at the moment. So exactly spot on. So it was a good reminder for us as well. So the first thing you want to do is to make a list of your top accounts. It can be 10, 20, 50, depending on how big is your market, right? If you work in a government agency, or if your customer is governments, obviously you're going to have a much smaller list, right? Or if you work with very big multinationals in the aerospace industry, well, your list is going to be very short, right? But if you work with SaaS companies, so just like tech companies, you're probably going to have so many ones that you want to work with. So there you need to prioritize the ones that you think are going to generate more value for you and that you can generate more value for them. Social selling is not only about LinkedIn, but it's about leveraging the social media platforms to connect with our customers, build relations, and generate leads or sales, of course, with these channels. but you should really start sharing content. And again, if you start from a perspective of account-based marketing, what you can do is to identify some of the topics that are most relevant to your audience, some of the pain points that they're facing, and then create content that helps them solve these problems. And it can be anything. It can be you creating assets, carousels, writing your posts, and so on. But you can also just like share articles, share videos, or share resources that you think are relevant for your people. But super important that you're not just there like waiting for people to reply to your DMs, but that you really are active on these platforms. The other one is to be active on groups, communities, and really everywhere where your audience is, you should be active as well. Meaning join networking events, join LinkedIn groups, for example. The LinkedIn groups, they're like, I think, a very underrated feature of LinkedIn. But when you're part of the same groups as your audience, you gain two things. First is credibility, because people are like, oh yeah, well, great, we have a group in common. But you can actually bypass the LinkedIn limitations in terms of connections, because you can directly send a message to people that are part of the same groups as you. So that makes it easier for you to actually start conversations with the right people. So you should really be more active on these social media platforms. Multi-channel approach also here again, like don't like, my advice is always like nail one platform, which is the main platform for your audience. In our case, it will be LinkedIn, for example, but don't discard all the other ones, because, well, obviously, probably all of you are on LinkedIn, but I'm pretty sure that some of you are on Twitter, some of you are still on Facebook, some of you are on Instagram, some of you are on TikTok, right? So I want to make sure that if you check the BD School on Instagram or on Facebook, you're actually going to find something, right? So that you can, again, say, oh, all right, well, first, it's a serious company, right? So they're everywhere. So, okay, good. And then you can get, like, again, some more insights into the company on your favorite channels, right? So important that you don't discredit the other channels, focus on one that is the main one, but then open up new ones. The other one is social listening. Now, social listening is really about observing and being really, really attentive to what your audience is doing, right? So again, if we go back to the account-based marketing, we're not going to have like too many leads, right? So it's going to be like a pool of limited amount of people, right, that we want to focus, which means we can really dedicate our time to seeing what are they posting, where are they commenting. Now on LinkedIn, there is a new feature. If you go on a profile of a person, you can actually filter by activity, by type of activity. So you don't only see the posts that the person shared, but you can see the posts that the person commented on. You can also get the documents, images, videos, so all the different formats that this person has shared, right? So what you can do is just like check them daily, see what they're doing, and if they're commenting on someone else's post, comment as well, right? If they're talking about some new things, new trends, new problems, and so on, write a post about that, right? Why? Because it's going to be super fresh in the mind of your prospects. So it's going to be very easy for them to say, oh, well, right, like this guy was reading my mind, right? Something like that. And of course, focus on building relationships. So don't just send a connection and then directly pitch what you're doing. Instead, like ask them questions, be genuinely interested in what they have to do, start a conversation, just talk to people. Next trend, hyper-personalization. So of course, here is all about delivering targeted, very targeted and personalized experiences to individual customers or prospects. So again, here we're talking about like ideally a strategy which is not only like a responsibility for one department, but we want to look at it in an integrated way. So we want to think in terms of cross-team collaboration, right? Because of course, as BDs, sometimes we are mainly in charge of the sales part. Some other times we're more in charge of like marketing or product and so on. So it really depends. But overall, hyper-personalization is something that should be done on a company level, right? So just thinking about a newsletter, the minimum you can do is to write the name, like to personalize the name of the person, right? When it comes to BD, if we do cold outreach, again, the minimum we can do is to write the name of the person we're talking to, but we can go to greater extent and really write emails that are extremely personalized to this specific person. Now, What are the main benefits of hyper-personalization? So obviously we have like really like a huge benefit in terms of engagement, right? Whenever, and you probably experienced that too, right? So if someone sends you an email with your name, you're probably more willing to talk or to respond or to read this email because there is your name in it. And it's just like we're humans, we like to hear our name. That's very basic. It also improves our customer experience, right? So imagine you're on a website and there is a chat that pops up that says your name, right? So that's amazing. You already feel like it's more friendly, it's more like customer centric. So you really feel more pampered as a customer. It obviously helps us increase conversion rates. You can make a test, like start sending messages on LinkedIn. 10 people, you just send a very generic template without saying the name, for example, but super generic template. And then the other 10 people, you send very, very personalized messages, something like, hey, I saw the comment on the post of this guy that you made. I found it super interesting. I want to connect with you. It's not even comparable, right? So super, super relevant. It helps us increase lead generation, of course, that's why we're here, improves the perception of our brand, and increases e-commerce revenues. What are some practical tips? Obviously, well, you can use cold outreach. That's, I think, still one of the tactics that is very used. Still very relevant. Every now and then you see these posts like, oh, cold outreach is dead, cold calling is dead. Nothing is dead if you do it properly. So that's a myth, right? Cold outreach still super relevant, but we are past the time in which we send thousands of emails with the same generic templates and hoping for the best. That does not work. And you can, again, you can test it out. Do 1 month in which you send 3,000 emails, always with the same templates. Do a month in which you send 200, but hyper-personalized, and see the difference. Whenever you personalize the email content, and here again, I mentioned the name because the name is the first thing, but it's really about like writing the right subject line, personalizing the subject line to something you've seen on LinkedIn about this person, for example. It can be personalizing the value proposition because you research this prospect and you found something very, very specific on their website that you think you could help them with. That should be the content of your email, right? Even the call to actions, that's also something you can personalize. And the other thing you can do is to build content assets, right? Again, SBDs, it's not said that you have access to that in terms of like creating your own assets or creating blog posts or videos, right? I especially if we talk like if we work for more like traditional companies, it's really difficult that we get access to it or that we get the go on doing all these things. That's not always the case. So again, scale it down. What can you do is to create, let's say, a carousel or an image on Canva and you put it there, right? And these things, they should really be personalized, let's say, to the different type of people that you're talking to. But of course, we don't want to like spend too much time on that, right? So personalizing absolutely everything takes a huge amount of time, which often we don't have. So the best practice here and the best tip I can give you here is do cold outreach, personalize, at least really hyper personalize the first email, the first contact point that you have with this person. But then as you go and you start seeing, like, if you talk, like, let's say, if you prospected already like a few hundreds people, you're going to see that most of the times they are the same scenarios repeating themselves over and over again, right? You can have 2, 3, up to 10, 15, right? So there can be many different scenarios that you find. But you're going to see that there's some patterns there, right? Because you're talking, again, to the same type of companies, to the same type of people. So what you can do is to build scenarios and then use these scenarios to create templates so that you can automate some of the things that you are doing, right? Trend, value-based content. I mean, if you're on every type of social media nowadays, you're bombarded with content all the time. I'm pretty sure the content you like the most is the one that A, inspires you, probably, but also the one that gives you some practical insights, right? Some practical value, some practical things that you can do immediately, right? Really notice that after, when you go on LinkedIn after this session, or maybe you have it open already, just go on your homepage and start scrolling through. And of course, you're going to find tons of stuff, right? Really pay attention to what catches your attention. Now, if you share content on LinkedIn, the top type of content nowadays is carousel, so the slides, right? So all these documents that you can just swipe and you read things, and then if you're really excited at the end of those, and then maybe you do one or two things that were written in these carousels, or you save them for later. That's what I do. Then I never go to check them back. But carousels are a great form of content, great type of content for LinkedIn. Ideally, again, you want to write about stuff that are relevant to your audience. So solve a problem, share a case study, share something really practical, step-by-step approach, like to do something, a step-by-step process, right? People you should follow, or these kind of things, right? Again, it needs to be related to your audience, so to what your audience is doing, right? So if you work in the automotive industry and you provide building materials for them, right? I don't know, door handles, maybe something you can talk about is the functionality of these things, or like how they make the car look better, and I don't know, something like that, right? So it should really be something super, super specific to the problems and the responsibilities of your audience. The other form of content that is really good and that works really well on social media is interactive content. I feel this has been a trend for a few years. So especially on LinkedIn, for LinkedIn polls, like at some point, now it's a little bit less, but there was a moment last year in which every 2 posts, one was a poll, but it was really like polls on the most random stuff, right? But polls are a great way of engaging with your audience. You can have white papers, or like any sorts of like documentation that you can share with your prospects. But keep in mind, like I was downloading a report before, it asked me so many things, and I was so done by the end of it. So if you do have something like that, again, it needs an integrated approach, but that's something that you can use. And again, the point is the information included in these documents should be relevant, practical, so that people like them and use them. The other form of content, type of content that you can share is testimonials. One exercise that we do in the live training with our students, for example, is they need to write a post on LinkedIn. Usually they don't want to do that. They feel like, I don't know what to say. I was like, all right, we make it easy. Let's go on your blog, on your company page, and let's find some testimonials from there. Most of the times they have either an article explaining the case study, or they have a video, and so it's like, okay, now we take this one and we write a post about this, and we put the link to this testimonial. That's very basic, right? You don't have to create anything. You can even just copy the review that the person said, you put it as a caption in the post, and you share people what your business can do for them, right? So again, it takes a little bit like of time, maybe courage, I would say, at the beginning to start writing, because it's a bit confronting at the very beginning. But literally, like once you start, then you're going to get better at it, and then you're going to get better at sharing content and building your personal brand. And the last type of content that really works is videos. Again, once again, as BDs, probably we don't have always the ability to do all these things within the company, but maybe someone else in the company did that, right? And these are also some other type of contents that type of content that you can use, like, well, again, here we said interactive content, funny content, educational, nostalgic content, and so on, right? So just like play around with that, and really, like, for me, the main metric is always like, what do I like, and what do I interact with? And now, last one, AI, artificial intelligence. I think by now, all of you know ChatGPT. If not, you've been living under a rock, but I'm pretty sure you all do. Of course, so what is artificial intelligence? So it's basically creating computer systems that can perform our own tasks. Now, artificial intelligence and automation is one of the sales technologies that has been like growing the fastest compared to other ones. For example, sales prospecting tools, other like sales process automation tools that you can use, partnership managers, partnership relation management, and so on. So artificial intelligence is really the one that has been growing the fastest, especially in the last couple of years. So of course we cannot ignore that. I've seen a lot of posts on LinkedIn talking about like how this is going to replace all of us. Personally, I do not believe that, because having used artificial intelligence, I think there's still some limitations now, and there's still a lot of things that a computer cannot do versus a human brain, right? So I think we're safe. So it can really help us finding leads, for example. Like one time at the very beginning of ChatGPT, I asked ChatGPT to give me like a list of the top 10 Dutch companies that invest the most in learning and development. So companies with the big training budget. And I got a list of 10 companies. I was like, oh, good, that's really convenient. So I don't have to look for it, you do it for me, right? So that could be like super useful way to spend your time and play around with the AI. But of course, it also helps us to find contact information, to validate the contact information we have, identify personality styles of people. In the other webinar, you're going to find also the tool that you can use for that. So it's amazing, like all the boring things in BD basically can be replaced by AI. So I think it's pretty good. You can also use it to write emails. Now I've seen just recently, there is an extension with ChatGPT for spreadsheets, in which basically you can just create like icebreakers and really hyper-personalized email from spreadsheet. As I said at the beginning, I love spreadsheets, so this for me is a great combination. But you can use AI to just like improve the way you write your emails, right? And like just like double check whether you wrote everything correctly, if it's easy to understand, and so on. You can use AI and automation also to do prospecting at scale, right? Now, one of the first tools I used in terms of sales automation, which now is more towards AI, is called Apollo.io. Maybe Vina, you can put it below. It's a little bit pricey, but it's an amazing tool. Like it does literally everything for you. So you can just like literally just create a sequence of emails, and it's going to be sent out, emails, calls, LinkedIn, and so on. So you can basically like do all the things that now takes you like hours to do. AI can really save you a lot of time for that. So definitely something to play around with. Of course, also helps with content personalization and with predictive lead scoring. Now, maybe lead scoring is might be advanced for some of you. It is for us, for example, we don't do lead scoring at the moment, but that is something, of course, that can be very helpful when you have like a large organization, right? In which you process a lot of leads, and maybe you have a lot of inbound leads, right? So how do you qualify them? How do you know? How do you prioritize them, right? So which ones should you talk more? Which one should you drop? Which is a big problem as well. Well, predictive lead scoring can help you. There are a lot of tools that can help you with that. Maybe we're gonna write a separate resource on all the tools. I didn't include many of the tools here because I knew I would be a little bit longer on the tips. What can you do now at home, let's say as a homework? So what you can do is first audit your current process. So really make a list of all the activities you do in terms of lead generation, and just like really have this list. It's okay, on a daily basis, I go on LinkedIn, I send emails, I go to events, I go to webinars, I don't know, anything. I do comments on LinkedIn, I don't know, anything you do, just audit the process and write down all the lead generation activities you do. Then split it and say, okay, these are all the things that I know that work, right? So I know that sending messages on LinkedIn is very effective for me. I get a lot of leads from that. Okay, great. All the things that already work, you should have a streamlined process. As I mentioned before, you can have like scenarios, you can have like templates and so on, but basically you want to have a process that can be easily replicated and fast, so that you don't have to spend too much time on the things that work already, but you can optimize the process. And then what you should do is to plan experiments for the new activities that you want to do, right? So if, for example, you say now, oh, you know what, like I think I want to try this account-based marketing, because so far I feel like I'm going after after too many different people and I don't have a clue. Okay, how can you do that? Well, you do an experiment, you run this experiment for a few weeks or a month, and then you measure how this activity worked for you. If it worked, then you scale it, you build the process. If not, that's fine, right? On the business development plan article that we shared before, you also find insights on the experiments. And if you download the BD plan, actually you find a list of many experiments that you can try on, some of them also for lead generation.